Let me quickly give you a little overview of what are we going to do in these 4 sessions of the competency program, competency professional program. In the first session, you're going to get an understanding of what is competency, various kinds, because you have to understand what it is. We are all the time talking about competency, ultimately, but I will make it so simple for you to go back and apply it to your organization. So what is this competency? How do we classify them? What is this, competency dictionary, architecture, where can we use, and all this about the competency iceberg model. So it will be an introduction and also a little thought for you to then start understanding this word competency. In the second session, what we are going to do, which is also the core of competency, is that you will understand the framework. In the second session, you will be learning the heart of the program, which is called how do you actually map competencies when you take a role, when you take a position. So I will put it very, very simply, no complexity in that. You can go back and do it. How will you map competencies for your organization, starting from, your roles, all right? So the entire competency mapping, and then how do you create your bars, those proficiency levels, what is the science behind them, and then how do you use that? And then if there are gaps, then what do you do? How do you develop your IDP plans, etc.? And the usage of these competency maps into all areas of HR functions, be it recruitment, performance management, compensation, etc. Then the third session is going to be very interesting, and some of you already wanting to know, which is all about assessment centers. We also call AC/DC centers, okay, for evaluating and finding out the gaps. And what is this assessment center? What are the design factors to be considered when you are designing an assessment center? How do you then assess them? What are those tests you are going to incorporate based on what conditions, what is the context? So you're going to learn about AC/DCs. And the last session is going to be this, what we call it in today's times, very important and critical skill also, the behavioral event interviewing and also the competency-based interviewing. Will also explain, is there a real difference between the competency-based interview and the BEI? How do you go about? And as an assessor, what are some of the skills you really need to pick up, etc. Okay. So this is going to be the entire overview of the 4 sessions. Anything, you can always WhatsApp, you can always, in every session, you can always bring up your own doubts, clarifications. If you have much more, then you can always talk or put up in a WhatsApp so that we can clarify those doubts. All right. Sorry. So and these are all the learning objectives. You can go through them later. Let us start. Wanting to just understand. So when we talk about competency, this widely used, I must say, today it's the most widely used word in organizations, competency. Anybody, what do you understand by this competency? Let us see, because a lot of you already know about it. What is competency?
Set of skills.
Huh?
Set of skills. I mean, skills can stand alone, like communication skill.
So, okay, you are saying
used with other
skills. All right. Okay, skills. All right. Somebody said
skills, knowledge. Skills, knowledge, personal style.
Okay, somebody said knowledge. Okay.
Ability.
Somebody said knowledge, and somebody said personality. Okay. Then someone said
ability.
I would say it's a combination of all, putting it together, from starting from your values, your motives, your personality traits,
Okay,
And
somebody
in the-
said combination.
And the display is in terms of the behavior. When you display
Combination.
your knowledge
Okay.
and behavior.
Of I'm talking about
Yes.
values, motives, all right? Some, okay. Some, anything else? Parul?
ability to perform a particular task.
Okay. Ability to do. Okay, ability is here. So I'm assuming that it is to perform a task. All right. I'm
Yeah,
assuming. Anyone else? Any more? Any more? Let's see. That's it. Okay. So competency. So as I get to know from you all, somebody said set of skills, knowledge, personality, ability, and then Parul says it's a combination of all this plus the values and the motives, which helps me in performing my job or a task or etc. Right? Okay. All right. I will just park that. But why is this competency so important? Why is it important? Why is competency important and why are we all the time, like Snehal said, oh, my organization says we have to have competencies in place. Let us understand before we start, why is competency very important today?
because there are certain competencies which are very unique to your industry, to your sector, and which you would like to retain. And as an organization, we would like to focus on retention of those competencies, or passing on those competencies to others, or develop those
Okay.
competencies for the business
Okay.
development.
Okay, Snehal says there are certain unique competencies. We need to develop them and we have to retain them. So therefore, it becomes very important for us to have those competencies in place. Okay, anyone else?
Yeah,
So
my
achieve the target.
Yeah,
yes,
Shiv.
certainly.
Shiv.
Every role require a different type of skill set, particularly when in an industry like in manufacturing. So to understand the roles, the competency play a very critical role during.
Okay. Okay, taken for granted. Anyone else?
To achieve the target or goal, or to perform the job in a correct way.
I would agree to what just said, that
Goal,
I believe that's a standardized
target. Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, but it's breaking at times. Okay.
So,
I think-
in addition to what was just said, that I would like to add that these competencies are important because they give us a standardized measuring unit of seeing that somebody is performing the job successfully, and there are certain performances which are not good. So, it's for me, it's like a standardized barometer of performance in an organization, which would be
Okay,
passed on.
standardization. Okay. One last response. One last. Anybody volunteering to?
I think I would agree with what Parul initially said, that it's not just the skill, but along with other factors like values, motivation. Skill is okay, one as a standalone part, but if we add it with other, ability, efficiency, and all those things put together, then it becomes a competency.
Okay.
I believe.
You know, why am I asking you this very important question, that why is, because you have taken time, you're going to attend 4 sessions. So it must be really very important. So first of all, I should know, hey, why is competency very important? Okay. So I always say, keep the end in mind. We always need to have the end in mind. Okay. Before begin with the end in mind. So think of all of you are working in organizations today. All right. What is the most important thing for a business or an organization? What is the most important thing? That is in terms of an outcome, or in terms of what do they want to achieve? Can I say they want to achieve their business goals, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of financials and customer satisfaction.
Business goals. Okay. Then that
Vision and mission.
leads to revenue, right? All these are some of these larger things for organizations. So therefore, top line, bottom line, profit. But if I can put it in a little more operational way,
Topics.
sorry. Right? You can achieve your business goals, you can achieve your revenue, you can achieve your profit only when all the individuals in an organization will be able to perform to their best top performance, and then you will achieve. Will you agree to me? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, so today they have realized that if your organization have the required competencies, whether unique competencies, etc., if all the roles or all the positions which are there in an organization have the required competencies, then they are able to perform what? To their best. That is, they will perform to the best, which is called top performance or superior performance. And when the entire organization individuals perform top performance or superior performance, obviously you will reach your performance, you will reach your targets, then you will achieve your revenue, you will achieve your business goals, and you will achieve profits. Simple mantra. So let me give you a little bit of, before I delve into it, let me give you a little history about the competencies. I'm sure everybody has read a lot about it. The father of competency, who is it? It's a Harvard professor called what? David
McClelland.
McClelland, right?
Yeah.
David McClelland. Now, this professor, this Harvard professor, he wrote a very interesting paper. And that paper was test for competence, not intelligence. Okay. Now, if you ask Madhuri, she's into talent acquisition. Not only she, there are many other people who must have done talent acquisition. They would mostly test for what? Intelligence. Does she have the knowledge? Does she have the skills? Okay. And then what we will do, hey, he's great. He studied from such an excellent institute, IIT, and he has such a great, skills. We take him. But how many of us really know that the best of the people, after 2 months or 3 months, stop performing, or they actually attract from the system? Do you know why? It's all because of the attitude or the other characteristics, which Parul mentioned rightly. It's a combination. So this professor, David McClelland, he published this paper and did a lot of research. And then he said that, yes, IQ tests, testing for intelligence, these are important. These are definitely important. You can't right away. But they are not the only factors. There is something else which is very, very important, which will, what we want when in an organization, when we hire? Anybody?
Right fitment for the
What we
organization.
want? What we want? What did I write? We
Like
want
the person will perform according to
predict.
our requirements.
Am I able to predict that he can perform? Right? Predict high performance. Got it? Whether he is able to perform very well. Now, so he said that if you have the competency, you will be able to predict high performance. Why? Because it has a causal relationship What does it mean? Anybody? Causal relationship. That means competency has a causal relationship. Anybody wants to elaborate on that? Yeah.
It's like the cause and effect model that we talk.
Exactly. So if you have the right kind of a competency, say for example, if you have a competency like what? High leadership competencies, which I would have mapped, then I will be able to predict that, yes, if I have taken Rashmi into that position, she'll be able to perform better. She'll be a good leader. If I say, hey, creativity, if I have actually evaluated for creativity for which this role requires, then I can predict that this person can be very creative in that role. So that's the most important thing, what he said. That is, it has a causal relationship. That is a cause and an effect relationship. So if you don't have the competency, you will not be able to perform. For example, I'll give you only a very small example. He did a lot of research with counselors. The United States Foreign Information Service would recruit a lot of white women who were PhDs and send them to the underdeveloped African countries as counselors. Okay, what qualification they had? Very high IQ and also PhDs, the best from the best universities. And they also employed the local African women to support them. Now, David McClelland's research showed that the local African women were better counselors as in compared to the white women who had very high knowledge, also to some extent very high skill. Now tell me why? Vinita?
They lack empathy and the connect which was required for that particular job to perform.
You are very close to that. Very close to that.
Attitude.
Anyone else?
Attitude.
Okay, you put it mildly. Somebody said attitude. One more, because all of you are HR seasoned professionals. So that therefore I'm asking that question. Yeah. Anyone else?
They were able to connect or relate to the real life scenario or situations.
Okay, good. Very close. So when I'm selecting or hiring a counselor, so the traditional method of, going for the best colleges, universities, high degrees, etc., and skill. But what is the real competency which is really required, which cannot be trained? Empathy. Empathy, right? Do you think for a counselor, empathy is very important?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Huh?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Empathy. So some of you were able to describe in a qualitative manner, which almost you were there. So what we call it as empathy. So when I'm actually recruiting a person, this also helps Madhuri. So I have to understand from my role, position, if I'm say, hey, empathy is a very, very critical competency, which can be maybe trained, but it's going to take a long time. Right? So is it not better for me to then identify which is that critical competency which will take a long time, and I better hire for that as in compared to take somebody who has no clue of empathy and then start training. Got it? So this is like another small example I want to give. I have to recruit between two animals, somebody to climb a tree. So here I have the option of, I'm a recruiter, I have the option of a tortoise and also a squirrel. Whom will I recruit?
Squirrel.
Climbing the tree,
Squirrel, because it has the potential and
potential, or it has that competency of climbing up trees?
It has the ability.
Ability, right? It can just, I can train tortoise, but it's going to really what? All my budget for training will be over by the time he is going to give results. Okay. At the same
Just
time,
one question. So
yeah.
it's for squirrel and tortoise, it was largely simpler to understand. But when you actually, it's very difficult to identify empathy when you're hiring. Like, how would you really know? Like,
Yeah,
if the
but I'm
person
not
has
going to
empathy?
get into that right now. I will definitely do all that. We will explain to you because we are going to go step by step. But right now,
Okay,
I
sure.
want you to understand, first of all, this importance of competency and why is it important. Okay. Like, for example, the tortoise. I have a river and I want to choose one of the animals between tortoise and a squirrel to swim through the water. I will use a tortoise, right? Because the tortoise has a natural ability, natural competency to swim through the water. So what I'm trying to tell you is that, first of all, why is it becoming very, very important competency is because of this research and a lot of established research and validity, etc., that if you have the competency, you are able to perform. If you don't have the competency, you cannot perform. So therefore, it becomes very, very imperative for organization to ensure that, hey, do I have people with the right kind of competencies across my organization at different levels, at different functions, so that I'm able to then achieve my business goals. Okay, that is it. Because if you have that, look at the benefits. Can we just look at 1 minute the benefits? Can we list down? What will be the benefits?
So
The
easy
benefits
to
are plenty in terms of cost, right?
Achieving targets.
Then achieving targets. Okay. Then in
Performance,
terms
high
of
performance.
your high performance, linking your strategy to competencies, how you can translate them. Strategy, right competencies, you are able to actually achieve everything. So you are aligning your HR to business goals. So that is why we are talking so much about competency and competency. Okay. Now, having said that, quickly, let me go back to just to give you that little bit of a understanding about competencies. All right. So competencies are those underlying characteristics of an individual which will predict superior performance. So that word predict is very important. And if you have the competencies, there is a causal relationship. That is a cause and an effect relationship. Now, having said that, now we can actually look at it like an iceberg. Okay. What? A competency. Right now, please just understand competency. Then I will talk about job competencies and personal competencies. First of all, just understand about. So when we look at an iceberg model, typically what happens when you see an iceberg, you can only see the tip of the iceberg in the water and the rest of it is submerged. So typically what happens, 20% is above the water and 80% is below the water. So when we define competency, what we can see is only what part. When I say what part is called what, the skill and the knowledge part. Can you test knowledge of somebody? How can you test knowledge of somebody? Easily. I can check through question answers about, hey, how much of HR do you know, compensation, job evaluation methods or performance management modules, etc. Skill, can I test a skill? I can ask a person, if he's a payroll person, please come and use the payroll and the spreadsheet and let us see how you will work on it, right? Okay, so this is easily tested. But competency is just not knowledge and skill. There is something submerged, as Parul mentioned. What is it? It's also about what? Your self-concept, or I can call it a social role. It's your self-image, your traits, your values, and motives. Okay? Motives are at the bottom, rock bottom. Motives are very, very important. Say, for example, some of you keep coming regularly to these sessions, a strong motive to learn, So because of the strong motive, it drives you, it drives that behavior of coming and ending. So motives will translate into behaviors. If you are a person who is highly achievement oriented, what will you do? Then you will start looking for goals, you'll do goal setting, you will want to achieve them. If you are a person with high, what? Power oriented, you will actually wanting to what? Grow in your role, look at, hey, is there power, is there control, etc. So it all depends on what are your kind of motives. It could be power, it could be material, it could be achievement. Now, what are traits? What are traits? Typically, traits are, they are actually the aspects of a person's behavior. Like, for example, can I say being a good listener is a trait? Yes or no? Yes. Eye for detail is a trait, right? Can you tell me some other traits? So these traits, how do you develop these traits? They come over a long period because they are trained when you are a young child, you are told some do's, don'ts, etc. So they become a part of you. So they are innate. You develop them over a period of time. What is the concept or self-image called? That means how do you think, how do you view yourself? Okay. What is your self-concept?
Is it
That's
same as
very, very.
self-esteem, ma'am? Is it
Pardon?
same as self-esteem, self-esteem, self-estimate?
Exactly. What is that what kind of an image do you have about yourself? Okay. Which is very, very important. And then, of course, your knowledge and skill. So these form the key, as I said, these are the components of a competency. Now, the question I'm going to ask you is skill a competency? Is skill a competency?
Yes, yes, it is.
Yes, absolutely. Skill is a component of a competency. But is competency just a skill?
No,
No,
no.
no.
No. So this is what I want you to get clear. So typically when we talk about skill is only the what part of it. Think about it. When we recruit people just for the knowledge and skill, that means, oh, he knows this, is the what part of it. But when he comes, when he has to actually deliver, when he has to perform, then the how part comes. So when the how part comes, what all do you use? Or what are the other components of a competency which come into play? Yeah?
Yeah.
It's behavioral
These-
part which
You
we
agree?
Yes,
His
yes.
motivation comes into play. Say, for example, I have recruited a payroll guy. Okay. Why did I recruit a payroll guy? 15 years of great experience in payroll. All right. He knows the skill. He has the knowledge. He has worked on different platforms, etc. Now he's come. After 3 or 4 months, he is not able to get along well with the other 5 or 6 payroll guys who also form a part of his team. Okay. He is not able to work as a team member. He is not able to collaborate. Okay. Then what does it show? That means he thinks, hey, what is this self-image? I'm very good. And so I know everything. So, these guys don't know anything. I've worked in huge number of, a wide range of industries. Whereas these guys have been working here for such a long time, only in one industry. So his self-image, not able to get along well with the team. So therefore, even if you hire a person who's really very good in payroll, now he can't get along well with the team. Now what happens after a month? 4 people leave. Payroll guys leave. Okay. Then what will the organization? Only one person is left. Who? This guy. So what happens? So you have to be very, very particular about ensuring that it is not just good enough to recruit for a person who's got great knowledge and great skill, but how well will he be able to adjust with the team? Or what are the other components of the competency which are required? Are you with me, guys? Okay. So we carry on.
Yes,
This
yes.
is very, very
Thank
clear.
you.
I'm trying to actually help you with the understanding of how does competency differ from when I just look at a knowledge or when I just look at a skill. Even at an entry level, when we actually do campus recruitment, for us, it's very, very important to look at not only the knowledge and skill, he is a 60% or 80%. Hey, what is his motivation? Does he have the learning ability? Or is he motivated to learn more? If he does not have, then if I'm going to take at a entry level and he has to learn a lot, then what will happen? Okay. And what kind of a traits he has? What are those particular traits which are required for a entry level engineer? Okay, so therefore competencies come into play, the how part. So simply to explain, when I mentioned about the iceberg model in a competency, the what is the knowledge and skill, and the how part is all about the deeply submerged iceberg, which talks about motives and traits and self-image and self-esteem and social role. Okay, guys, any clarifications thus far, please?
Madam, how does psychometric test help in to frame the competency metrics or to know the competency of person?
So when we are going to use assessment centers, okay? Because right now we are still at the beginning of a understanding competency. Then we will start beginning to look at job competencies when we start mapping. And when we do assessment centership, definitely we will talk about how is the usage of psychometric tests, okay? In trying to identify and how do you evaluate, okay? Is that all right? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Just to reinforce, the skill and the knowledge can be trained easily if there are any gaps. Okay. But what cannot be trained easily is the other components of the competency, which are traits, motives, or the self-concept or the values. In fact, most of the organizations, if they want a culture fit, what would they do? They're not going to train. The first and the most important thing they will do is check for culture fit and then test for skill and knowledge. Because it's a waste of time to do testing for skill and knowledge, and then I will test for culture fit. Got it? Okay. So this is just to show you that it takes a longer time to train for traits and motives or values, but it takes a very short time. The gaps in terms of knowledge and skill are easily trained. So whenever you recruit, hire, etc., it's always better to hire an average person or a little better person in terms of skill and knowledge, but definitely who has the right kind of traits and motives for that role. Okay. I'll just give
So
one more example. Yeah.
so
Somebody
the
was wanting
culture
to
is
ask me. This
the
is
culture is
yeah.
picked up from
Sneha,
the
Sneha,
culture
right? Yeah.
the culture is picked up from traits and motives again, like the cultural fitment that we do while hiring.
Absolutely. First of all, when you do, I'll just give you a little because you asked me. When we do a cultural fitment, what happens? What is culture all about? It is the way the organization works, which you translate it through your policies, procedures, etc. Okay. I can have a high performance culture. I can have a, what is it, depending on my values, because the organization has certain core values and these are translated into culture. Now, so if I am hiring a person who does not have, say, for example, a simple thing like integrity or respect for an individual, okay? So these are very, very high, or customer centricity or customer service or client focus. So it's a behavioral competency, right? Huh? And also it stems from the kind of value system. So unless and until your value system is in sync with my value, like for me, target, maybe just achieving targets is very important, but I don't care about customer or client focus, etc. Then it's a conflict. So I have to ensure when I'm actually taking my employees, hey, those 3 or 4 core values. So am I taking the right kind of people? Okay, we'll talk about culture fitment also when we do assessment
Sure.
centers,
Thanks.
Sneha.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Huh? All right. And also we'll talk about when we are talking about core competencies. So when we talk about architecture, how do they fit in there? Right. Just to again reiterate the cause and the effect relationship. Okay. That is, if you have an intent that gets translated into action and that gives you outcome. Very clear, right? Intent is nothing but what? Motive. No? Say, for example, when I talked about motive, intrinsic motive, which is innate inside a person, say, for example, Snehalata Deshmukh is a person with a very high achievement motivation. Intrinsic means it is within her. Okay. What will she do in her role? Without anybody telling also, she will start, she doesn't have to wait for her boss to tell. She will set her goal. She will take responsibility. Nobody has to tell her, personal responsibility. Then she will also keep getting feedbacks on her achievement. And she's ready to take risks. She will not think, hey, if I do this, what will happen? If I do this, maybe I'll miss my increment, etc. And she'll be on a continuous improvement, improving productivity. So that is how people with high motivation, intrinsic motivation, which is called within yourself, can become high achievers. So if there is an organization whom I want to recruit for people who have high achievement motivation, then I'll have to test for that. Okay. But there is also something called what, if I want to motivate, I can also do as an organization. What do you do in compensation? You can also use extrinsic motivators. What is that called? If you want to motivate people, you may have much, or you may have some to certain degree. But if you want to motivate motivate employees, what do organizations do then?
Incentives, variable pay.
Absolutely. Incentives, benefits, all these are called extrinsic motivators. But then all these also to a certain extent are going to motivate you. After some time, any amount of pay is not going to. See, if your job is so monotonous, but every time this guy wants to leave, we'll say, okay, pay him a little more money, little more money. But do you think it's going to constantly keep him motivated? Unless until you change the job and talk to him and find out what exactly he wants. You getting me? Okay. So when, I'm sure most of you will have this question. Hey, but what is the difference between competence and competency? What is the difference between competence and competency? I can say Vinita has the competence for this job. So essentially, I'm talking about what a skill aspect of it. Okay. But when I talk about competency, then that gets translated into what? All the other behaviors. Very clear, guys? Okay. And I've already spoken about this historical influence and how, McClelland has actually done a lot of research. So I'm not wanting to. And in fact, Spencer and Spencer, if you get a hands on. So he is the one who actually wrote this book called Competence at Work. And the competency movement picked up with that. And thereafter, in the 90s, then all the organizations, because they had to perform, the kind of market conditions changed. So they wanted to ensure that if you have the competencies in place, then the organizations could really achieve things. Okay. Yeah. All right. So just when we talk about competencies, I'm beginning to just help you with it. We talk about two kinds of competencies: threshold competencies, differentiating competencies. Anybody who's heard this word? Because you have to have hear the threshold competencies, differentiating competencies. Anybody who wants to explain or who have understood what is the threshold competencies? And
Threshold competencies are the basic competencies which every person have. like
Okay. So
normal
Vinita,
being a
you
team
used
player.
basic. Good. Okay.
Basic.
So when I talk about threshold, say for example, a recruiter. Typically, what kind of competencies do you think a recruiter will need? He will need some technical competencies. He will also need certain behavioral competencies. So we'll stay with that. So the minimum requirement is called threshold. The minimum requirement in terms of whether it's knowledge or skill or others, it's called the threshold. And what is differentiating? Differentiating is the maximum or those competencies which really differentiate this high performer from the low performer. Got it? So you need to understand, because when we do competency mapping, we're going to use these two words called differentiating and threshold. Just having minimum competencies at threshold, and differentiating is a person who is able to differentiate, who is a high performer and differentiates from a low performer. Okay. Typically, if I were to say, so let me just give you a little more first. So when we talk about competencies, we talk about what we call as in an organization, when you start, so everybody wants to go and do this competencies, right? We will say, hey, now we need to design or we need to do competencies. So we start with something called competency architecture. Have you heard this word called competency architecture? Okay, but I'm sure everybody has heard this word called architecture, right? When I say architecture, what does it mean? What does an architect do? He will design, right? He will design where should be the bathroom, where should be the dining hall. He will design. So why will he design that? Because the entire house should fit into that plan, should have some kind of a consistency. It can't be one room to be a different plan and another room to be a different plan, a dining to be another place. So what happens? You are actually setting rules, right? So architecture, just like an architect designs a house, so a competency architecture means, think of this, I'll give you a, what does it mean? That means in an organization, hey, there will be what? Core competencies, which are also called common competencies. Okay, so I'm introducing to one, what is that called? Core competencies. In respect of your level, position, etc., core competencies cutting across, everybody should have. And where are they derived from? They are derived from my vision, my company's vision, the kind of values. Okay, say, so you were mentioning about, right? So that's where your culture gets formed. So they are the bedrock or the at the bottom. These are called, can you see? Core competencies. All right. Then what we call as, everybody in an organization structure, you have positions. So, and these positions are in certain functions. So you have what? Every function, HR, finance, procurement, marketing. So they will need to have job family competencies, or you can also call them as functional competencies. Very clear? Or you can also call them as, some people also call as technical competencies at a broad length. But typically, what are they? Job family competencies. Any questions here, please? Anybody? So every function has certain competencies. Then you have what? Specific job specific competencies. What are job specific competencies? Depending on every role. So you have for every role specific competency. And then, so you have core competencies, you have job family and job specific competencies, and then you have what? Leadership competencies for your top management or at any level, who is a leader and who's managing the team. So broadly, when you look at a competency architecture, these are the type of competencies. Let me show you an example of how it looks when I'm actually, for example, there are two positions in a project management team. There is one person called project assistant position, and there's another called project manager. Okay. Project manager is the boss reporting, and project assistant is the reportee. So when we talk about an architecture, both project assistant and project manager should have what competencies? Anybody? Yeah, they should have core competencies. They should have job family competencies, and they should also have role specific competencies. So if you actually see for this project assistant, core competencies are what? What are the core competencies here? Achievement orientation, adaptability, and client focus. So these three core competencies are cutting across the entire organization, mind you. So which even the project manager has, but at different intensities. When I said intensities, what does it mean? Proficiency levels. Or what does it mean? Say, for example, communication. At a low level, say for an HR assistant, the proficiency level or the intent for communication maybe just to communicate with certain stakeholders, etc. Okay, very low level, right? But for an HR head, will the proficiency level or the intensity be very high? Yes or no? Now everybody is very quiet, so I want to really get some responses.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Why?
yes.
Let me ask why.
So
Why did you say it will be high for a HR head and for an HR assistant? Yes, Shiv, you want to answer?
Yes, madam. There is a distinction between the role as a
Because
the
the
HR
job
assistant
content
will.
is different. Because the job content is different.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to tell you here is that the competencies are based on the job a person is doing, the job content. Okay. So therefore, the job specific competencies will vary. But whereas some job family competencies will be similar, some core competencies will be similar, but their proficiency levels or the intensity level or the requirement will be different. Okay. So if you typically see when you actually go and do a competency mapping for all your positions, you will be doing like this. Say project assistant at level 1, level 2, level 1, project manager, he will need at level 3, level 4, level 4. Then for job family, this is this. Then and for a project manager, you can see the difference. And job specific, definitely it's a two different, because at project manager, you need project risk management and resource management. While for project assistant, he needs quality focus and teamwork. Okay. So let me just, having showed you the picture or the image, you'll be able to then connect with what I'm trying to do. So when we talk about an architecture, as I said, it gives you what? Because every organization will have a different architecture, the way you want to build your competencies. And then you cannot have, just like an architect, you cannot build them differently for different roles. So you need to have what? Consistency. So what does it give you? It gives you alignment. It gives you fairness in the way you have applied the rules, all the positions. And also it gives you that continuity, consistency of competencies. Okay. So when we look at architecture, core competencies like teamwork, client focus, achieving excellence, and where are they derived from? Where are core competencies derived, guys? From vision, mission, okay, business goals. What is that you really want to achieve? Can creativity, innovation, these are some of the core competencies. What is Google's core competency? Anybody?
Innovation.
Innovation. So if they want innovation, is it only for top people? It cuts across everybody, right? Huh? So, and they will definitely evaluate for this competency across all levels. Or for example, anybody who's heard of Walmart, what could be their one of their values?
Inventory management or warehouse.
Yeah. In fact, that is
Logistics,
one. And operational excellence.
Operation excellence.
Right. So therefore, the emphasis on standard operating procedures, SOPs, etc. Okay. They want standardization. Say, for example, for customer delight companies, what could be their value?
Customer centric.
Yes. So therefore, a person, say, for example, I will hire Vinita. She's very good in knowledge, skill, etc. But she lacks that customer orientation or customer centricity. What will I do? So that is a core value. I mean, that's a value, that's a culture fit. So definitely that is becoming very, very critical for me. So I need to really evaluate or test for that first, because my entire business strategy is dependent on, because the kind of product and services I do is all customization, closer to the customer, use CRM, understanding their needs. So if this person lacks that, then any amount of her knowledge and skill will not really, make a fit into my organization, because there could be client conflicts, etc., etc. Okay. Yeah.
Just wanted
So-
to know that are the core competencies that important? Like if we do not, if just for an instance, if we do not have core competencies in an organization, okay,
Hmm.
is that fine, or it is mandatory to have core competencies? Just to understand more on this.
For an organization,
Yeah, for an organization.
Sampada is like this. Some organizations will actually make it explicit by what? Writing about it, okay, and ensuring that there's a huge amount of orientation training on it. And some are implicit, whether you speak about it or not, you will have certain kind of a core competency, because your product and services are dependent on certain value you want to. Because definitely what happens, hey, if you are actually in a business model where you let me take an example. You are at a very average cost, a good quality, so that means you are into an operation excellence mode. Even without talking about it, you will say, I have to sell those products and services at a reasonably good cost, but good quality, etc. In order to do that, what is happening? A value will be what? Adhering to SOPs, right? Adhering to operational excellence. That becomes your value, no? If you don't adhere to operational excellence, how will you sell your products? Are you getting me, Sampada?
Correct.
So the only difference is you may be explicit. If you're
Okay.
not explicit, it will be implicit.
Okay.
But it is better to be explicit and communicate it so that people all know about it.
Correct. Got it.
Because when there is a gap in performance, you are all the time trying to say, hey, you are not up to the mark. See, our products and services, they have to have certain SOPs, etc. And whether those employees have that kind of a core value or not, then you will have to start educating them, training them.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Because I think that is what an excellent example I got it from you, because we do so I basically work for PMS system, and we also have core competencies with them. So we generally link those core competencies with the training. So probably when there are where we find a lot of gaps, okay, where a person is not educated to that level, and we think those are some competencies are lacking, when we have to, I mean, where they have to focus more on. We generally fill those gaps with training. So I just wanted to understand whether these competencies are required, or we can just go with the training, or how we could go about.
So you can actually do some kind of a survey data and then say, hey, because when you do training for all your performance gaps, it becomes a huge cost. It's always best. I give you an example, right? So if you are if you do analytics and finding, hey, we are having a huge problems with client focus. We are all the time getting reworking, people are not. So why do you get all these issues? Because there are certain one or two things which you really want, those values. So these are not at all there in my employees, right?
Correct.
If achieving excellence is one of the key value, whether you say it or not, and then that can be validated by your productivity, which is not up to the mark, your reworking, rematerial, etc. Okay, can we carry on? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So some of them, then when we talk about function, job family is nothing but functional competencies. So as you know, every function will have their own competencies, finance, procurement, marketing. So if there is a role which is embedded in HR, it will require certain competencies. It's a role which is embedded in marketing. So you will have those specific competencies and job specific competencies. That is role specific, and then leadership competencies. So we will be doing in detail when we are doing competency mapping for a role. So please do not get a little worried about, hey, how am I going to map these? But we will actually go through a very detailed process of mapping them. Okay. But this is to get you an understanding. First, you need to really understand. So, and whenever we do the competency mapping, then how do you measure them? Let me see if anybody knows. So how do we measure them? Some of you have used, or just take a, how do we measure competencies?
So measuring their level in the sense like how much expert they are in it. Either
Yeah, you said it. So if I just say, absolutely. So if I just have a competency, say for example, if I just have a competency, like for example, client focus, I cannot measure it unless and until I create something called a scale, a measurement scale. Okay. Just by defining client focus is very important. Then you will evaluate client focus for an X person in a certain manner. I will do it in a certain manner. So there won't be standardization at all. To bring in standardization and to measure these competencies across all levels in a similar fashion, we will create what we are called a scale, which is also called, I'm sure everybody knows, it's called bars. What is it called? Bars. Behaviorally anchored rating scales. So you have a bar, a scale could be 1 to 5, 1 to 4, or 1 to 3, depending on how much you want it to be differentiated. Okay. And then you are anchoring a behavior there on those scales, because 1 will not mean anything to me, 2 will not mean anything to me, unless and until I have a behavior anchored there. Okay. Let me just show you. So the scale will serve two purposes. It will also help you with what? Evaluating the current jobs and then finding their gaps. That's how we do the IDPs or the training. Okay. It also will allow comparisons. So let me show you how does a scale look like. 1 second. Yeah. Can you see this? All of you? Just an example.
Yes.
Let me take you to this place first. For example, I have actually analyzed this job. This just for example, a junior level engineer. Okay. And I've given 2 competencies at a functional level. What are they? Using CAD tools. Okay. CAD/CAM tools. Then development of engines. Okay. Now you also have to write those some of the definitions. What do you mean? So the definitions are like generating cost-effective design interface. Okay, evaluating cost parameters, and developing engines is explain how engine works, identify failures, etc. All these comes from the job description. Now, having done the functional competencies, now I will that is the what part. Now these are the how part, behavioral competencies. So for this junior engineer, he needs also conflict management and planning in order to be very effective in his job. Okay, using the CAD/CAM tools and using the machines, he will actually then have some, if he does not have conflict management competency, he can run into huge conflict issues. So planning is also very, very important. How does he plan and all? Now to do this, how will he evaluate this position? I can have a scale. Now this scale is, if you can see, 5. It's a 5 rating scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, with 1 as a beginner, 2 as, a little bit higher, practitioner, and then practitioner to expert and expert. Now, in your organization, since you're going to start, you can start with 1 to 4 or 1 to 3 only, so that you don't get into, because if you do 1 to 5, it becomes too complex for you. All right. So if you see that on this bar, the proficiency level at a beginner is always at a very lowest level. Say, for example, I want this person, using this CAD tools, generate efficient and economical concepts in that. A beginner will be able to just make what is that concept, just guidance. He may be a little proficiency. But if you see the expert guys, if you read this expert description, ability to visualize the impact of concepts on all products, proficiency to guide the team for concept generation. So it's huge. Okay. So you will see that when you are creating a rating scale, is essentially what happens is, this is what it is. So entry to stretch. So you can create a rating scale where the highest will be a mastery and the lowest will be a entry level. Okay, guys? Now you're going to do an exercise. Okay, take 5 to 10 minutes and quickly identify. These are all the list of attributes. Quickly identify which is the value, which is a skill, and which is a behavior. Appraisal. What is it? Is it a skills? Body language. Yes. Body language.
Body language.
Behavior. Behavior. Coaching. Skill. Commitment.
Value.
Great. Confidentiality. Value.
Skill.
Value.
Confidentiality.
I was actually confused between this, but I find it more as a value.
Counseling. Skill. Courtesy. Value.
Behavior.
Customer care. Skill. Data facility. Facility. You're facilitating. It's a behavior. Okay. Decisiveness. Behavior. Detail handling. So why have I given you this? You have to have this. It's very, very important, because when we talk about competency, it has to be observed and measured. So therefore we are saying, so detail handling, behavior. Okay, driving for quality also is a behavior. Environmental awareness, behavior. Sorry, environmental awareness is a value.
Skill.
It's a value. People becoming aware of environment, it's a value. Equal opportunities.
Value.
Honesty. Value. Influencing is a skill. Initiating action is a behavior. Integrity is a value. Interviewing is a skill. Judgment.
Behavior.
Managing.
I have
meetings.
A question here. Why
Yeah.
judgment is a behavior, not a value?
You are judging, right? At that time, you're doing something, no? Can you, simple question, behavior. Can you observe?
Okay.
That's a behavior. If you can observe, it's a behavior. Managing
I just
meetings.
wanted you to define all the three in short before we really, maybe once we finish the exercise, how you really differentiate. Yeah.
Sure. So managing meetings, it's a skill. Mentoring, skill. Monitoring, skill. Negotiating, skill. Performance review,
Skill.
Persuasiveness,
Behavior.
Planning, behavior.
Not a skill. Okay.
So presenting is a
Skill.
presentation skill. It's a skill. Problem solving, skill. Project management, skill. Quality consciousness, value. reliability, value. Selling is a skill. Strategic planning is a skill. Stress tolerance is a behavior. Teamworking is a behavior. And time management is a skill. I'm sure most of you have got it all right.
Sensitivity would be behavior again, right?
Simple.
Sensitivity.
Now somebody asked me one thing. Yeah.
Why
Behavior.
sensitivity is not connected with empathy, and empathy is a value? Are these two not connected?
Being sensitive, it could be, adding on to empathy. Okay. But by itself being sensitive. So simple. Somebody asked me, ma'am, first of all, we want to know how. Behavior. If you want to identify amongst all this, what comes in behavior, you have to ask the question, can I observe it? Okay. Anything which is not observed is not a behavior. Can I observe it? Behavior. And skill. Anything which is learned and trained, you have been trained in that and you're applying it. That's a skill. Then what is a value? Let's see. I told both of. So there are a lot of people who have already very good at. I'll ask Vinita because she's done a lot of work on that. Vinita,
Yes.
how will you identify value?
Value is kind of intrinsic traits or which is inbuilt, maybe because of your upbringing or the environmental.
Yeah. So when I want to identify value, value is something innate, which is actually translated from your founding brothers, for which you want to stand, which will be there. Value can be of an organization. Value also can be your own value, right? Personal value. Like, for example, for me, my personal value, respect for others. That is because the way I was brought up, respect, respect everybody, honesty, integrity, which form a part of me. Can you teach somebody
is
suddenly
this?
integrity? Huh?
Environmental awareness, how is that value?
Yeah, environmental awareness is what? It's a value. Why? That means that if I'm not aware of environment, I can just drop anything anywhere. I can pollute. I can, people. Why do you think today there's so much of pollution? Be it anything, huh? Because people are really not having that awareness about. They don't believe that that's a value actually. Ensuring that hey, we give a better planet to Earth to our future generations. So that's unless and until that's a value imbibed in you, you will not be keeping the environment clean, etc. Are you getting me? Think about it, reflect on it.
Sure.
So awareness may be simultaneously to the consciousness about the environment.
So it creates, that means, awareness is there within you in the sense, hey, I have to really, and how does that come? That doesn't come suddenly unless and until you're groomed like that. Hey, you have to, even, in the sense that put things in the right place, put the garbage in. So some people just eat and throw it. If you're not aware of it, so how does it come? You have to be groomed. So that's a value which you have imbibed. So therefore, you become very aware of the entire environment. That becomes your value. Ensuring that some people even pick up others' garbage and throw it properly. Why? Because he's so aware of the environment and saying, hey, let me go and throw it in the right place. Right?
Why monitoring is a behavior and not a skill?
Monitoring. Can you observe it?
No, we cannot.
You cannot?
Monitoring in a sense, if I'm given a job, if I'm, if I am able to monitor what is going around.
So
Okay,
therefore,
it's a skill, no?
No. So therefore, when you will check for that behavior, you will say, hey, how did he do that? What is that he did to monitor?
Okay.
You will check for activity, right?
Okay. So basically checking up of the activity is something which is behavioral?
Not checking. What you can observe. So monitoring is something you can observe.
Okay. Observation to an activity is a behavioral?
Yes, behavior is
Okay.
something which is observed and then you can measure it. But if you can't
Okay.
actually observe, then what will you measure?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
For example, so when you want to test for creativity,
Okay.
so what will I do? I will not say, hey, how will I check for a person's creativity? Then I want to see his behavior. So maybe if I'm doing a simulation exercise, I'll give him some kind of a game where I'll give him some needles and some other material, etc. And say, hey, try and make a structure which can stand for which will have such a height and which will stand for some time, etc., etc. So I will watch how is he doing and what. So, and then I can observe that entire activity and then I will rate him maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe 3. Are you with me?
Yes.
So that is why we are coming to that now slowly and slowly, that unless and until in a competency, when you say competency, it exists, it has to be observed and it has to be specific and it can be measured. It can be
Okay.
measured. Otherwise, it is meaningless. I will say anybody is great. He is initiator. I will say somebody is a great influencer. Somebody is, and you will rate him in a performance management, maybe at a 2, maybe at a 3, maybe at a 4.
Correct.
So the existence of competencies, because they have to be specific, they have to be observed, they have to be then measured.
Measured. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Specific, observed, and measured is one of the criteria, correct?
Exactly. Okay, so should we take a small? So I gave you a little background of the competency architecture. Okay. Now you have a small breakout activity. You will be divided into 2 groups. All right. Okay. Now there is a position which is HR recruitment manager. Very, very common, familiar role, which is known to all of you. All right. What does a recruitment manager do? You know that. Now, in these 2 groups, you represent that HR recruitment manager for one organization. Okay. For your whatever organization you take, whether it's a logistic company, whatever. And then I want you to then, in an Excel sheet, create for this recruitment manager, based on your organization, what are the 2 or 3 core competencies, then what are the functional competencies, and then what are those role specific competencies. Just list them, no levels, nothing. Brainstorm yourself based on based on your understanding of what this HR recruitment manager does in your organization. Take any organization. So 2 groups, so you can actually take one organization, one of the participants can represent that organization, and then discuss and write. What are those 3 core competencies, functional competencies, and what? Job specific competencies. And when you are writing functional competencies, please also write technical competencies when anything required. Okay, great. So who is going to present? There are 2 groups, right?
Yeah. So as per the role of HR recruitment manager, so we have mentioned the core competency are first one is relationship building. Okay. Then
From where
teamwork.
did you derive these core competencies? How did you go about? What was the thinking process behind?
As per the everyone's experience, so accordingly we have mentioned here.
Okay. So relationship building. Yeah, even the participants who over there in that group, they can also talk about it. So why did you put relationship building as a core competency?
This could be a core
Just to get
competency of a
the,
company. Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
across if it's a customer-centric organization, I think relationship building is core competency, because all
Mhm.
it cuts across all the job families and all the jobs, that this is the main,
Okay.
that you're
Okay.
expected to go beyond, go an extra mile for customers. So that's where.
All right. Okay. So if this is a competency, can you observe it? Can you then measure it? Just
Ma'am, I think it means we can measure it because
okay.
means
So
as
I'm just trying to
as
get you all convinced into it. Okay. So I give it to you. All right. Teamwork. So maybe this is an organization where there's a lot of collaboration, etc. So you are saying across the organization, teamwork is very important. So that becomes one of our core values. Okay. All right.
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Then adaptability.
Adaptability. Hmm.
Uh,
Tell me how adaptability you all thought of core value.
Ma'am, I think it means we should accept the change positive way. Okay, so in some of the organizations, it means sudden change used to come. So I think adaptability.
So basically, adaptability would be, more of adapting to the working environment of that organization, or, managing the competing demands of it. Okay, maybe accepting instructions or instructive or constructive feedbacks,
So
sort
will
of.
you look at it like more like a behavioral competency required at an individual level,
Probably because
or at an organization level, you are saying, hey, we are into high constant change of technologies and constant change in the market, so etc. So people have to be
yes,
very, very okay,
product.
fine.
I think organization level, because today in a dynamic organizations and the world we are, I think ability to adapt to change is very important and
Fine,
critical.
fine.
Ma'am,
Authenticity. Authenticity. What do you mean? So so when you actually um, name a competency, you have to also have, you should define it. So authenticity. What is the thinking behind authenticity? Why have you put authenticity as a core value? How does it impact the organization's goals or products and services? What does it mean? I mean, what was the thought process?
whatever we are selling, or means our product, or where means whatever means we are in business, that should be authentic. Okay, and whatever means the specification we used to mention. Okay, so that should be authentic.
So basically, we are selling authentic products, and our communications with vendors as well as internally, we want to drive that we are very genuine and authentic. So that's the value system that we want to drive.
Even if we are committing anything, it means if we are saying it means that this product is having means so and so specification, so that should be means genuine
Okay.
or
Okay.
authentic.
So I will give you right now, but when we are going to do the entire competency mapping with the job description, then you will see the how part of it. So I'm just giving it to you based on your own thinking process. And maybe your thinking process will change a little later when we do the other competency mapping part of it. Okay. Functional. So when you say functional, yes, yeah. How did you derive the functional competencies?
So function, we look at it as
First
an
one is
job family, as an HR,
Right,
like,
right,
as an HR
right.
professional, active listening
Hmm.
is, I think, very important, because, we are there to support business, to drive initiatives. So I think it's really
Okay.
important to.
Okay. So active listening is a very important critical. So in functional, you also take into consideration, like for example, in the HR function, people will be in terms of knowledge and skill as well. So he or she has to be having a good understanding of the HR concepts, HR knowledge, right? Trends,
Yes.
practices, concepts. So that's across all employees in that particular function. You'll need to have functional knowledge, right? So you can also write functional knowledge as one competency there. Huh?
Yes.
Observation. Yeah. How will you convince me that observation is also a functional skill? Of course, planning becomes very important. Okay, today technology also becomes a very functional skill because you have to have the ability to use a lot of technology platforms, which could be a payroll, which could be a recruitment software, etc., etc. Right? I give it to you. Planning and also technology, but observation.
Observation also plays important role. So many times it happens for the recruiter or the HR, based on observation of how the employee give the response, their body language, all this we are able to decide on the genuine candidature or not. So that's why observation plays an important role in the HR domain as a functional one.
Okay. Okay.
Also to understand the dynamics within the team in case if there are any other issues within the team.
All
So I
right.
think
Okay.
observation
Okay.
plays a role.
Okay. Okay. Now, job specific. Yeah. Decision making, marketing ability, negotiation skills, analysis, of course, resource management. Yeah. Okay. I give all the 5 because yes. So essentially, when you were looking at this, how did you go about? So there should be a starting point, right? So typically, when we are mapping certain competencies, we start with what something called a job description. A job description will give us a good understanding of what is the role, responsibilities, etc. The responsibilities can be broken down this into task activities. So all the tasks are then analyzed and then looked at in terms of what is the knowledge required, what is the skill required, and then you start mapping the competencies. Okay. But generally to get a view, I think to start with, you have a good understanding. So generally to get a view of how would you go about, but you have done a good job, guys. Great. Okay. Can I have the second group? What kind of an organization have you taken into consideration?
We just took a generic role for any recruiter in any industry.
For any industry. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Across a generic one, which could be fit for
Mhm.
anything, any small, big, or IT or non-IT, anything.
Okay.
So we try to list only the generic
Okay.
things which can be utilized in any company.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. So the core we have identified as business understanding. Now we'll have to define the elements of this, like what to understand in business. Say a BPO may have a lot of early attrition of people. So
Okay. So when
challenges
you
of
talk
business.
about business understanding, to a great extent, it comes into a functional because so
Okay.
a core competency will be those key competencies which will cutting across all. So business understanding is not exactly a core competency, Prashant.
Okay. So we'll put it in functional. Okay. Collaborative.
Collaboration, yes. Collaboration. Some organizations say, hey, I want a thing across all my employees should be highly collaborative. Somebody is asking something. Yeah.
Okay. So business understanding. So it should be like if we are now we have taken this for for manufacturing, suppose. So everybody should know what kind of business we are into, so that even as a recruiter or even as a in other department, know what kind of business we are, what are our core values, what are our culture about, and
Yeah.
then only
So
we would be able to understand and we can align our goals and the company goals. Yeah.
But that becomes very, very broad. It doesn't become a competency as such. So you can actually put it under, typically you have business acumen, business understanding. You can put it for different functions, but it doesn't come under core competencies or core value as such. Okay?
Okay.
No, business acumen becomes a part of your functional, technical, Prashant. It doesn't come under core. Okay. Collaborative. Yes. What is this understanding values of a company? Descriptive, qualitative rather. You
Yeah.
agree? Hello?
Yeah.
So you can delete that.
Yeah. Cannot measure it.
Huh. As ability to assess candidates on culture fitment. Ability itself, ability to assess. That means it comes under skill, no?
Yes, ma'am. So except collaborative, I don't see. I mean, role
No
specific.
problem. No problem, because this is just the tip of the iceberg. We will do a lot more in this
Okay.
area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go to the role specific one. These are team handling, planning, organizing, and brand positioning. You know, if you go for campus hire or you talk to a candidate, reach out to someone, you need to sell the job, you need to sell the brand, sell the company. Not the right word to use. Sell is not the right word, but basically position yourself in the right.
Typically, so I can just modify your statement. Team handling can be managing team.
Yes.
Because handling will be like, a little rough.
Yeah, a wrong word. Team leadership, I had written team leadership, but that would be
managing teams.
Managing is better.
Because it could be cross-functional as well, because a recruitment manager may have to actually talk to other people in the business also. So you could say managing teams. Yeah. Planning and organizing.
Team management would be the word.
Yeah. You can have team management, managing teams, but team handling will be a little rough.
Yeah. Planning of events.
Planning, of course, very important. Yeah. Organizing and planning, of course, very important. Brand positioning.
I mean, the recruiters are the brand ambassadors of the organization. If they
we can say employer branding. Employer branding.
Brand positioning sounds more of a marketing concept.
Yeah,
but
so employer branding, because being a recruitment manager.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ma'am, in core competency, can we add more like communication skills will be the most important?
In core
but then I put it in functional. Where do we? I mean, it comes. I should come under both, ma'am. I mean, that's
which one?
Communication skills.
Communication. It should be core as well.
So you are saying communication skill, and then how can it come into? So it's a part of your functional, right? But if you are saying yes, we have, here communication becomes our values because we want to communicate to our stakeholders, internal stakeholders, external stakeholders. So if your product and service is such that it needs extensive communication, maybe, it depends from. That's why it's very contextual. So communication, I will say, okay, if you can have it, if you feel that yes, your organization is heavily into, so communication becomes a very important value. Transparency, openness.
So confidentiality and transparency, they are antagonistic. Can we put it in core?
Where did you put?
Core.
Transparency.
I haven't put it. I'm just thinking like transparency and confidentiality. Confidentiality means you
Where
are.
Where did you put confidentiality here? Where did you put confidentiality here?
I'm trying.
So you're talking about it. Okay.
Yeah.
It depends. Yeah. If your core value is openness and transparency, then all your policies, procedures, systems, even compensation structures will have to be communicated, saying this broadly, these are the levels, this is what our base pays, etc., etc. So even ratings, how much you give also sometimes, you have to have a broad kind of a communication so that people do not get bogged down in terms of he got more and I got less and all that. If you believe in that
confidentiality means one
openness.
person's salary, what you have offered should not be known to the other person in the team. That's one.
Like for example, one of the core values could be openness.
Yeah, so transparency and fairness means people should be rewarded equally.
Yeah. Then fairness is just not rewarding. Fairness will be in all sorts of things. How are you fair? Compensation equitable, performance management, how are you? Do you have diversity and inclusion? So don't get bogged down with just fairness means one thing only, right? So entire function of HR, how do you actually communicate your processes? How do you communicate things, right? Your reward and recognition, everything in fair. So people know that, yes, we get rewarded for what our effort is. Okay, good. Fairness you have put, very interesting.
So this is fine now, the core one.
Yeah,
and the roles
absolutely, absolutely.
Now this we have put in interviewing skills like competency-based interviewing, assessment tests, recruitment tools, awareness like applicant tracking systems.
What is reporting?
Reporting of weekly reports or monthly reports to the management.
Reporting. All right.
Reporting to the management or within the teams.
Projections, whatever we have. Negotiation is actually
skill, very important. Data management, yes.
Including referral,
reporting can be also a part of data management if you are, because typically if you are managing a lot of data management, you are also doing a lot of reporting, right?
Yes.
Budget management, yes. Knowledge and understanding of psychometric tools, yes. Time management, yes. Yes, business acumen or business understanding, yes. Because if he doesn't understand the business, how is he going to, how he, she going to, recruit people, the right kind of people in the right budgets and the right timelines, etc. Okay.
Understanding of business means constraints as well as values, whatever.
It self-explains.
Processes or products.
Everything, Ability to assess candidates on cultural fitment. Okay. See, understanding psychometric culture. Assessing candidates.
Depends, ma'am. For a consultancy,
assessing candidates on cultural fitment. Okay.
Maybe a consultancy which outsources people on their payroll to some other consultant company. Those companies, assessing candidate on cultural fitment doesn't matter. And maybe it sometimes matter if the client's culture is like specific and the people that they are sending should be. I mean, it can be yes or no, both. Depends on the type.
Right. Okay. Good work. At least you are able to list out the key core and functional and role specific competencies. Okay. All right. So having said this, the most important document to map competencies will be what according to you? All of you just thought of something, but as I said, competencies are very contextual, very specific to the organization. So which is the document which we use to do competency mapping then?
I think job description.
Absolutely. So job description becomes your starting point, and it has to be an updated job description in order to map competencies. And how will you actually document a job description? By doing job analysis. Okay. Job analysis is actually analyzing the job in a systematic way so that you are able to document your job description. And for all of you who will be doing this, there's a very nice, interesting, short method to do job descriptions. And I'm sure some of you know about it. What is that? Please use ONET online. Yeah. It's a repository of all the job descriptions. All that you need to do is just put the name there and keyword search, and you will get a summary form as also a detailed job description. Now you can send it to the stakeholders and get the current form by saying, hey, add or delete. And you can do even 500 job descriptions in, say, about 2 weeks' time. Okay. All right. So that is about the, how do you map just the competencies from the core, technical or functional, and job specific competencies. Not heard at all. Okay. What is a dictionary? Do you use a dictionary?
Yes.
Normally, just think of a dictionary. What does it do?
Give the definition.
Of somebody.
Definition, meaning.
So you have the definitions, meanings. So typically, likewise,
also proficiency levels, right?
So every organization, when they get into competency mapping, what they do, they start doing competency mapping for all the roles, right? And then they will then have a competency dictionary which captures all the competencies at a core competency level, a functional competency level, job specific, with all the proficiency levels. So how does it help? Just as the way a dictionary helps you at any point of time for an organization across all levels, anybody who wants clarity, say for example, team building or managing teams, they will get an understanding as to if I'm at a level 1 or a grade 1, okay, in this function. So what is the proficiency level for me for team management? Or for example, business acumen. What is the proficiency level? So you have the competencies and you also have the rating scales along with the proficiency levels, which are called the bars. So which helps you across the organization for all the levels, for all the employees, a good common understanding. If you don't have it, what happens? Then people will really not know, hey, this competency at what level and what intensity, etc. So with the competency dictionary, anybody can go and check and verify, etc. It gives you a common understanding of that competency. What does it stand for? What is the proficiency level? At what level is it? And for whom does it relate to? So that's the importance of a competency dictionary. Okay. Very clear, guys? So we are going to make you also do a small competency dictionary as a homework. Now, what are some of the dimensions this dictionary will have? These bars, when you write them, as I said, it will have intensity. Intensity means at rate 1, what is the level of intensity? At rate 2 or rating scale 2, what is the level of intensity? It will also have the impact. How much of impact? Outcome impact. What is the kind of complexity? What is the amount of effort required? And what are its unique dimensions? So when you write a competency dictionary along with the competencies, you will actually then get into all the details so that all the employees in the organization will have a common understanding of what the competencies stand for. Okay. So when we talk about a competency dictionary, now in an organization, you know that there is what? Lower level, middle level, senior level. So the intensity will be different at different levels. Say, for example, at a lower level or entry level, the kind of competencies required will dependent on the what does he need to perform. So it will be typically minimum standards. So you will see that the proficiency level also is divided into entry level, fully effective or mature level, and mastery level. This is with reference to customer orientation or customer sensitivity. So at a level 1, what do you think? What is written here? At a level 1, it is unsatisfactory performance. That means you can expect the representative to treat a customer rudely. But at level 5, it's an outstanding performance. If a customer has a defective merchandise, that is not the responsibility of the store. You can expect this representative to help the customer arrange for the needed repairs elsewhere. So have you seen the response with the reference to 1 and 5? Now you'll also see that while you are actually moving from 1 to 5, the 2 and 3 and the 4 responses are also progressively becoming a little more intense as opposed to 1. Okay, so this is called a what? I call it as a bar and a proficiency level. This, what is the situation? An office boy needs money for treatment of his mother and has not received his paycheck because he has already taken advance salary. Now, how the HR person will handle this critical situation? Can you create a bar, a rating scale of 1 to 4? Now, I will give you the lead. 1 could be what? I can say, the HR officer or HR person can say, he has already taken the money, so I cannot give any advance, right? I'm giving you the lead. Now, from there on, you can start. Give me 4 responses trying to create a behavioral indicator with 4 rating skills. Can you share what you have written?
So I've written on my notebook. Yeah, so level 1, like the HR cannot give the money as it is against the company policy.
Yeah.
Level 2, HR
Ha.
can take help. HR can take help of company insurance. That if the insurance can be given, if insurance can help out to give the money or take care of the situation. Level 3, the HR can give some percentage of advance again, not the entire 100%, but say 10%, because considering already the advance was given. And level 4 gives 100% advance considering the criticality of the situation.
Okay. Yeah.
In one, he straightforwardly say no. In second, he make him understand the company policies, like this is the situation, and then that I can't help you. And third one again, keep giving him some deviation on that, where he can ask the management to give that deviation, or anything like ESI or insurance can help. And the highest one go to the management and ask for the final deviation, and then give him the doing an effort for that particular person, which is out of the.
Okay, interesting. Parul, let's see your response.
So the first one is that no help, and
No help, right?
second is ask him to get his own friend circle to help, and offer him an advice. Or if the person is not incorporated in the company insurance, or whether I'm assuming that the person is not part of the company insurance, then do some self-help and friends help, offer advice. Third is get the medicine bills or whatever the bill amount is, and put their own team, the direct team, to contribute and take the ownership and contribute, looking at what percentage contributions can be made willingly by the team, the immediate team. Fourth will be asking for a company contribution, appeal to all people, and if people can contribute. And fifth, I will say, taking a policy deviation, taking as a special humanitarian, on the ground of humanitarians, taking the request forward to the management and deviating from the policy and asking for more advance based on the evidence and proofs they would have. So for me, policy deviation is the last.
Okay. So what's the learning? Because we wanted to help you with how do you actually create a proficiency level. A, what is the question now? The office boy needs money. That's right. Huh? Though he has taken advance, but he needs money right now because his mother is sick and she has to be treated. So the HR officer, the least he will do is, like somebody said, no, you have already taken, I mentioned about you have already taken the advance, so we have no more to give you. Now, has he stretched there? He has not stretched at all. He said, hey, you have already taken, so there's no stretch at all. Now, but his mother is sick. Has he been able to actually then arrest the problem or give a solution to it? So the next somebody said, some insurance. I think that. So typically what happens in a group insurance, you have some kind of a contingency amount. So the HR officer can stretch himself, say, okay, fine, there is a contingency because the mother is very sick. We give you from the contingency, right? Next, what else? At a third level, what somebody said, third level, very interesting. Somebody said, okay, that's insurance. That could be coming under second level. Now at a third level, what he could do, he could also actually stretch more in terms of taking a real exception. Somebody said exception, because this is an exception case. Go to the CEO, say an exception and say his mother is really sick, he has taken, but I think we will need some more money, and maybe as a contingency, get some kind of an approval and take that. Okay. At a fourth, you could create a kind of a policy where at times this happens. So maybe this is just it has happened to the, you can take it, that sometimes it happens. So create a kind of a policy where if people have actually taken advance also, how do we then, give advance or money to such people who are in such critical situations. So what I'm trying to say is trying to just say no to a situation to looking at the problem from a very, very broad perspective. Are you with me, guys? Huh? So that's how you actually start looking at a proficiency level in terms of, did the HR manager stretch himself more than what he could do from his resources? Or he said many a times you will consume a leave and say, hey, no, you can't get any leave. You will go by the rule book. No? So that is the essence of this. When we are going to do proficiency levels, we'll give you a little more understanding of the Bloom's technique and how do we write the proficiencies, because that's the key for competency mapping. So this is just to give you an insight into how, when I have something to do, I can take the least option of not saying no, or else I can also look at explore the other options, right? Okay. All right. Okay, guys. So let me just quickly give you a little recap on whatever. And typically what happens when we are using a rating scale, we can use a rating scale of 4 or 5. But the commonly used rating scale is a Likert scale, which is also which has only 4 ratings. Okay, it's called a Likert scale. We'll also explain to you what is a Likert scale in our next session, so that you have a good understanding of how do you use the scale to create a behaviorally bars anchored rating scales. Okay, so let me do a quick recap of what we have understood, and which will have a good foundation for our next session. So let me start with anybody who can give start summing up what have we done and what have we learned for today's class. First, we started with what is the competency, why competency, yes?
So we started with what is competencies and what are the how competencies work on with with the iceberg model, like how we see on the skills, knowledge, social roles, self-image, traits, motives. Then we came across what is threshold competency and what is differentiating competency.
Okay. Can I have somebody else? Yeah. Can we have somebody else? So how do we, what is threshold competency and differentiating competency?
So threshold.
Yeah, Vinita. Yeah.
So threshold competencies are the basic competencies which we are expecting from the from everybody, from every employee. And for
minimum competencies. We typically use the word minimum competencies at the minimum level, not basic competencies. Okay. Yeah.
Component of competency.
Okay.
That,
Differentiating no, we have not finished Vinita's. Differentiating competencies.
Differentiating competencies that is required for a particular function or for a particular job.
Okay.
Maximum
so
requirement.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, Shiv, tell me.
Component of competency like skills and attitude and knowledge.
Okay.
And
so others. So the in the components of competency, the what part is the skill and the knowledge, and the how part is the other things which actually form the self-concept, the motives, the values, etc. Okay. Yeah. Now we talked about competency architecture. So when we talked about competency architecture, what does it constitute of? How does it help? What are the benefits?
So it starts with vision mission, which makes the core competencies. Then there come the job families.
Okay.
And then
so
the
anybody
particular
else?
jobs and the leadership.
Anybody else who wants? Okay. So anybody else who wants to? Yeah, we talked about the structure. So when we talk about competency architecture, it's just like building a house. So which is different from every organization will have its own architecture because the context is different. So you will actually look at core competencies, the job specific competencies, the job family competencies, and the leadership competencies. All right. Now, when we talk about competency dictionary, what does it mean?
It means like making a competency dictionary for that particular, for the organization, for all the jobs we have.
Yeah, absolutely. So a dictionary will have what? It will actually, it's a compilation of all the competencies across all the levels, across all the roles. It will contain all the competencies along with their
Proficiency level.
bars or called the proficiency levels. All right. Now, okay, so when we start talking about competency mapping, what do you mean? Let's see. So I'll just start with, because next session is going to be very crucial. So let me start with the, grounding of. So when we say competency mapping, what does it mean?
Mapping can be judging or even evaluating a person against that competency and at what level that person is at. And
Okay,
finding
anybody
the
else?
gap areas,
Yeah.
where
Just
the person and where the person is currently, and what are the gap areas.
so it's
Okay.
as good as the inventory stock, what we say, like what are the
Uh-huh.
current competency we have in the organization, as what Vinita said, and then
Mm.
what we need to develop or where we need to reach that. So that's how we map the competency. Where are we currently?
We map the competencies on the levels, so probably it will be beginner to the experts, probably mapping them on the based on the competencies of the job role required.
Okay. Okay, good. So here is it. So I want you to be very, very clear about it. So when we talk about competency mapping, it is actually mapping or identifying the competencies required for the role, for the role or POSITI position, not for the person, not the person. See, if Vinita is working as an head HR, it is not competency mapping, does not mean that I'm actually mapping competencies for Vinita. No, I'm trying to identify the required competencies for the role in which Vinita is working, which is HR manager, maybe head HR, etc. Okay. So, and how will I do mapping? Taking the job description and also talking to people who are good in that job, who are performing very well in the job, high performers. Okay. So it's a process where I actually talk to people who are very good in that job and taking the job description and I do the mapping of the competencies. So job description becomes very, very important. JD. Now somebody said, but when I'm doing assessment center and development center, what am I trying to do? I'm assessing Vinita or Snehalata or Shiv. What are the competency he has vis-a-vis the required competencies of that particular job? Are you very now clear? So one is job competencies, the other is person specific competencies. So when I talk about a competency, that means Vinita could be having X, Y, Z competencies. Got it? Now for a recruitment executive, I need 3 or 4 competencies. For example, in terms of functional competencies, in terms of job specific. Now, when I'm going to evaluate and interview her, I'm not going to evaluate what Vinita has. I will evaluate looking at the requirement of the recruitment executive competencies and interview or assess whether Vinita has these competencies which are required for the recruitment executive. Are you with me? Okay. So we should not get mixed up saying that, yes, somebody said in the beginning, competency mapping is a list. No. So competency mapping is done for every role in the organization. But if you are not able to do for every role, you can actually choose some critical positions to begin with and start looking at their competencies. Okay. Why? How will it help you? Because it will ensure you success and it will ensure you performance. You are able to also then get the right people. So have you understood this very, very clearly? Competency mapping? Okay. So once you have competencies, now where all can you use? You can use it for recruitment. How will you use it for recruitment? Because if you are hiring an X position or a Y position, you have already mapped the competencies. Now you will actually taken the candidates and you will look at, hey, are they having those required competencies? So they become your standard. Now, if you are interviewing X candidate, Y candidate, or Z candidate, everybody will be evaluated on the same standard of what those competencies are, along with their behavioral bars, which is proficiency levels. Got it? Performance management. How can I use it for performance management?
For identifying the
promotions and
Promotions, even training.
High performer.
Yes, but how will you use competency? The same
KRS
competency.
Assess them
Huh?
against the
High
competencies,
performance
again, assess them for.
Because when you are again using the same competencies of a HR executive, say I'm using for performance management, again you will use, my goals will be set on those competencies. So therefore, the what of it and how of it, how did he perform, and how will I evaluate based on those competencies which are required, which are again the same. Now, if I want to promote, promotion, again I will say, hey, for the required promotion, which is at a higher level, what are the competencies required? So what are the gaps? Do I do some training? So we do typically called a developmental center. Whenever we do a promotion, we do assessment center, which is actually called a developmental center, to identify the gaps. Say, for example, there are 10 good sales reps and I want to push them to a sales manager. Can I do that automatically? If I want to promote them automatically, because the role is so different, it needs different skill sets, different competencies, managing, planning, etc. Whereas a sales rep has a different set of competencies. So I need to train him. So it becomes again a common tool for me. Now, today we are also talking about pay for competencies, compensation, right? More the number of competencies, higher the competencies, you are also paying them incentive and also giving increments. Can you use it in L&D? Creating your IDP plans?
yes.
Huh? That is developmental plans by using again development centers. So why? Traditionally, what is to happen? Okay, I'm sending these people for communication training. I'm sending these people for some training. They were not linked with their real requirement of competencies. But today you can't afford to send because budget is limited. It has to be very focused. So therefore, what are you trying to do? You are identifying that competency gaps and sending them only for those required competencies so that the bars are raised. Okay? And
One question.
Yeah.
In the next class, while we're doing competency mapping, would you really let us know that from JD, how do you really do the mapping?
Absolutely.
Just take us
That
through
is, yeah.
Yeah.
I will actually help you. That's the core. And I'll actually go to the ONET, get you a job description, download every task statement, activity statement. How do you then translate it to what is required into knowledge skill? We'll do that. Okay.
Great.
Ma'am,
Great.
one
Thanks.
more thing, how do we define criteria to identify critical roles in an organization? I mean, it's just by the whims and fancies of the operational leaders that this role is critical. How do we cross-check and critically examine that is not a critical role and we can let the role, even it's a redundant role maybe. So that's a conflicting situation between HR and operations. How do we have a standard of identifying the critical roles that on which we could do that competency check or whatever?
Absolutely, Prashant. How do you typically in organizations, not more than 10 to 15% are critical roles across all the levels. So how do you actually then find that they are strategic roles? Okay.
Yes,
That
ma'am.
anybody has a clue? How do you actually identify that they are critical roles or what? Strategic roles? Huh?
Is
Who
a
has
direct
a high
impact on business and revenue?
huge impact. Yeah, I was just about to say huge impact, Prashant. No,
Yes.
but I will give you a very, specific qualitative and quantitative criteria, because I don't want to rush it up with this question, because I'm sure everybody also wants to know. Okay, I'll bear that in mind. All right. So today we're just trying to create a broad framework for you all to understand things. But in the next session, we will definitely do in detail, in depth. How do you also identify these critical roles? Okay. All right. Career planning. Can we also use competencies for a career planning? Huh? Career progression? Yes or no?
Yes, we
Yes,
can.
ma'am. Succession planning also.
Yeah. Succession planning, career planning.
Can we also have someone for, we can also identify or people on PIP cases?
Simple, no? When you have huge gaps in terms of performance, huh? So you
Correct.
can clearly find out and then send them for PIPs, because huge gaps in terms of performance. Because, yeah, in the end, I want to really tell you the statement of the importance of competency, what you said, PIP, because it helps you to actually find out and measure the gaps in performance. And
Skill gap
performance is
analysis.
key for the success of any organization, right? So
Correct.
across the organization, therefore, that's why they want to have all the competencies in place, so that whatever they do in terms of HR functions, whether it's recruitment, performance, promotion, etc., they are there going by the DNA, which is called the competency frameworks. Okay. Yes, guys. Any one or two questions I can take them before we wrap up, close the session? Yeah.
So when we come to the topic competency mapping,
Yeah.
how do we actually go by differentiating between two similar outcome people? Yet, I know I'm asking a little premature question. Maybe we will be covering it tomorrow.
No problem, but nevertheless, similar outcomes.
Yeah, who have similar outcomes but have different competencies, and both the roles are critical.
Both the roles. You have any role in mind?
Maybe we can discuss this tomorrow. I think we'll exceed our
Okay.
timeline.
Think about it. Give me think about it.
Yeah.
It's the best thing is to find, ask all silly questions, any questions, but then you get clarity. Okay. That's very important. Yeah. So
Sure,
I hope
I'll
all
ask
of you have got some clarity in terms of understanding, because what I could see that there was not much of an understanding about competency as such. Okay. And I'm sure all of you have got an good understanding of competency, right? In the next session, we will do in depth the competency mapping, identifying competencies along with the proficiency levels, so that this is the key and you can go and actually do it in your organizations.